today from the matrix, and you're using the Oca guide.
We call it the Oca guide, but it's the Organizational Capacity Assessment Guide for Pacific civil society organizations. It's a guide that was developed by Oxfam with our partners across 10 Pacific Island countries. And what it does, it helps organizations assess their organizational capacity when it comes to 5 areas. So the 5 areas are governance. Governance is the first pillar. Organizational structure and management, human resources, finances, and the 5th one is not really it's not really about organizational capacity, but kind of like the minimum that you should have for influencing, and that's around collaboration and influencing. So 5 areas. Yeah, so that's the Oca guide. Yes.
Remember, the purple line is the harvesting, where we want to reach. In a perfect world, we would get there. This is where Songsongwa Marama is right now, according to your self-assessment.
What it has is this kind of matrix, and it allows organizations to unpack governance. What is good governance? So it asks about their board, their constitution, their registration, and in that table or matrix, it says you have different scenarios where your organization is either at different stages. At a planting stage, that's the first one. Seedling, where it's starting to germinate. The third is around maturing, and the final one is harvesting, because you're actually, reaping the fruits, the benefit of your work. So those are the 4 stages in the Oca guide, and it's available across the 5 themes. 5 pillars. The graphs that were shown on the 3rd day of the workshop at Songsongwa Marama were really graphs that came out of group work that the women were given. So they were split up into 4 groups. We didn't assess the 5th area, so we just focused on the organization, because they felt that they needed to improve the organization first. So we had one group on governance, one group on organizational structure and management, another group on human resources, and the final group on finances. And what they did is that they had about 2 hours to look through it, and they ranked in the different groups. We think that Songsongwa Marama is at maybe the seedling stage, or halfway between seedling and maturing, halfway between planting and seedling. So they plotted it on newsprint, on butcher paper. And after that was done, we had to, because they did it separately, they presented it, and they also saw some gaps already. And some of them came up with their recommendations then. But then what we had to do before we went into providing graphs to them, we had to agree first of all. All of the women in the room had to agree that this is where we feel Songsongwa Marama is. So we facilitated a discussion with them. Once they had confirmed that yes, Songsongwa Marama is halfway between seedling and planting for this area. Once that was done, we were able to plot it into an Excel spreadsheet and come up with a spider graph. Yeah. So the spider graphs that we then shared to them, we shared it on the same day after they had done their presentations and agreed. And they were able to see there that it's called a spider graph because it looks like a spider's web. So the outer layer, the outer line, is like the perfect. In a perfect world, you would be at this one, and that's the harvesting stage where you're reaping the benefit. So they could see on the spider graph, this is where we want to move. And in the mid, then you were also showing that according to what you've said and you agreed, this is where you are. So they could see, I think for governance, it was the spider graph showed it was an orange line, which was a harvesting stage, and their line on the spider graph that we showed them was a blue line. And it showed right then and there that, like, for governance, there are some areas of strength. The good thing about the spider graph is that it shows you that you're not completely bad. You might be good in some areas, but in other areas you're weak. So for example, for Songsong Marama, they felt that 1.3 was they felt that it was strong. So that's around governance of the alliance. Another area that they felt was strong, not perfect, but stronger than the others, was let's see, 1.7. 1.7 was the accountability and transparency. Again, not perfect, but better than the others. An area of weakness for them, using the spider graph, was 1.4, around the constituency. So they all agreed, and they were there. The constituency is the members. They were there in the room, so they felt that Songsong Wamarama has a huge constituency, but they don't know what's happening. So the link from the grassroots, from the village, from the Koro to the Tikina to the Yasana, and then here at the national level, they felt was weak. So because of that, the spider graph, and you see the diagram, it like goes in. Yeah. So really, what the spider graph is really a visual representation. So it helps them see that yes, we have some strengths, but we also have some weaknesses, and it shows them how far away they are from the perfect scenario and how much work they need to do. The number of points that the web has depends on how many, I guess, points there are to be unpacked in the different pillars or sections under the Oca Guide. So in governance, there are eight different points. So point 1 is around the purpose of the CSO, 2 is around registration, and so on. So there are 8 altogether. For the organizational structure and management one, that's a triangle because there are 3 points to unpack under the organizational structure and management pillar. And then under human resources, there are four points, because it goes from human resources, there are recruitment, job description, performance appraisal, and staff development. And then the one with the most number of points is, of course, finances. There's a lot of areas around compliance with finance. So under finance, there's 11 points. So that's why you have different shapes of the spider's web. And when it comes to their baseline, where the Songo Marama or any CSO that does this exercise, where they see themselves, they would be the one that's a different color in the middle. And their points of where they are really depends on their ranking. So again, coming back to the group exercise, where they ranked their organization under planting, seedling, maturing, or harvesting, it's from that discussion and from that agreement that we're able to extract, okay, so this is where you are. So I said earlier when I explained about the graph, my earlier explanation was that we use Excel. So we're lucky enough that we have Excel. If you don't have Excel, then you probably have to do it manually, like we're taught back in primary school and secondary school, how to plot things on the graph. So using that, we're able to just punch in the numbers, and that's where it's really important for them to place. Like if they place it at seedling, where in that box are you? Are you just at the beginning? At planting, Are you just planting? So you're at this end of the box. This is the matrix that they're given. Or are you halfway between seedling? And it's because of where they position it that we're able to give it a score in the Excel. Excel document that we have. Once we give it a score, we're then able to to show the spider graph, but it's all from their agreement on this is where we are.
You all heard that? Yes? Yes. Okay, bang the table if you heard it. So the organizational review is this, what we've been doing in the past 3 days, will feed into the organizational review. So your views and everything that has been shared will be documented and passed on to the executive and to you, the National Council, so it will go into the organizational review. Sandon, right? Okay, so we finished organizational structure. Yes. Okay. Second, human resources. Okay, so this was an area when we did the assessment yesterday, self-assessment, you all graded it, agreed that it was all at planting. Okay? And then we all agreed, okay, through voting, whether it was in the beginning, middle, or at the end of planting. So because of that, that's why Songsong Wamarama's capacity in relation to human resources is here in the middle. And this is at harvesting.
So always when we facilitate the agreement around where they are on the spectrum, on the range, from planting to harvesting, we always try and get them to agree, okay, you at this point. Has everyone agreed that you're on this at this point? Because that's critical for the spider graph to see how far they have to go to get to the harvesting stage. Yeah. So the spider graph came from their agreement. Yes. Songo Marama, after they had agreed to the ratings and we'd given them the spider graph, then what happens is that we come back to the office and then we see everything and we provide them a general rating for governance completely. They've already rated where they are on governance for the 8 areas. So for governance, we felt that, after everything had been said, was there an organization that has been established way back in 1924, because they don't have processes in place, policies, and things documented, and also because the constituency is not informed and kept up to date, that they were still at the seedling stage. Yeah. So, and I guess I didn't say this before, but with the Oca Guide, we also recognize that the journey of development, of an organization's development from planting, seedling, maturing, and harvesting, it's not just a one-way journey. You're not just growing all the time. Sometimes you go back, and it's always like going through these different stages, dependent on the circumstances. So for Songsong Wamarama, they might have been very effective before, years ago, but because they haven't been able to keep up with compliance and all these other things, they've moved back to seedling. So they agreed to that. For organizational structure, they felt that because most things are, again, not documented, it's unclear about the structure, how, and they don't have policies. Again, this time they were at planting. So they felt they were at the first stage. And that was the same for human resources. With human resources, they don't even have staff. They all have volunteers, they have no policies for that. And for finances as well, it was the same thing. They felt that they were at planting. So that was overall. The final exercise we had to facilitate with them was taking them a step further and allowing them to take some ownership of the way forward. So that was when the final graph, but it was a graph that they, although we had the pencil pen and we were drawing on a piece of newsprint, they were the ones that were telling us, you start from here and you draw, link it up. So that was the final exercise we did with them, which was around the Rebbilib. Yeah. The Rebbilib exercise, it's not English, it's not Fijian, it's actually a Marshallese word from the Marshall Islands, and it's spelled Rebillib, Rebbilib. And what the Rebbilib is it's a stick chart. It's a navigational tool that's used by navigators, seafarers in the Marshall Islands. They use that to teach teach young people or whoever needs to go by sea to another. So that's how they pass on that knowledge around seafaring. And what the Rebbilib does, it shows, it's just a stick chart, and it has like shells on it, nodes. Those shells represent the islands, and the different sticks and whatever they have around it shows the wave patterns, the reefs, so it shows them how they can go through. So we've used that analogy within Oxfam to take our Oca guide a step further, we've used that as a tool that allows civil society organizations to bridge the gap between finding out that this is where you are and you want to move forward. How are you going to move the organization forward? So what it basically is after we've shown them, we've facilitated the group exercise and self-assessment, we've shown them the spider graph, we then have a conversation with them, and we show them this is what your chart looks like, this is what your spider graph looks like, and this is what your chart from the Oca guide looks like. You're at seedling for this one, at at planting for another one, at maturing for this. So it's on different stages. So it also looks like a map, because those different rankings are really like islands where you. So we allow them to then say, okay, now that you've seen your spider graph and you realize that you have a lot of work to do, where do you want to start? And we ask them, do you want to start from an area of strength? So they can, there's no formula to it. It's completely up to the organization. Do you want to start from an area of strength or an area of weakness?
2.1 is the organizational structure of Songo Maram. 2.2 is the policies and procedures. 2.3 is the organizational review. So again, I throw it to the room. Where would you like to start? With an area of weakness, or where you have challenges, or with an area of strength? Area of strength. So which of the two? 2.1 or 2.3?
So with Songo Wamarama, they felt they wanted to start off with an area of strength for them, which was 1.7. That was around board accountability and transparency. So I said, okay, we'll start our journey here. So then we just drew a circle around the chart, that particular rating. We'll start from here, but if we're starting from here, what are we doing? So then we put it back to the CSO organization. Okay, we want to do this. So an example is we want to check how are we being accountable. Are we sharing the minutes? If we're not sharing the minutes with everyone, are we doing it in another format, like a summary, an update to our members? So that's the action. That's the planned action. And then we keep drawing. So then the questions we ask them is, if you do this, what else will be improved? What would be the next part on the journey that moves? And then they could continue linking. I think with Songo Maram, they felt that once that was done, they would then link to their goals and strategies, which is part of the strategic plan. And the exercise keeps going on. So at the end of that exercise, which can be very long or can be very short, dependent on how the health of the organization. So with Songo Maram, it was a very passionate discussion, conversation, which was good. There's a lot of buy-in from them. And it took us, at the end of it, sometimes, although it can be a painful exercise, at the end of it, they can see, this is our map. This is our way forward. And I guess for Pacific Islanders, it's different when you're from a plan that you just write out in a table. Whereas when you have it drawn like this, okay, I see. This is where I'm going. This is our path of. So it makes a lot more sense to them. Yeah. So at the end of that exercise, they then had four spider graphs that showed where they were, and 4 Rebbilibs, which was their pathway forward. Yeah. For governance, organizational structure and management, human resources and finances. Oca guide that we now have is not like the first Oca guide we had. It's very different from the first one that we took in country to Tonga, Vanuatu, and Marshall Islands. So we've changed it so much, and we've kept building on it because we listen. We've listened to what our partners in country have said. So around recommending the Oca guide, I can't say enough about how useful it is as a tool and a guide for civil society organizations to use. And that's not just because I was part of the development of it, but really because what we've done is we've unpacked the areas around governance, organizational structure and management, human resources, finances, and then the collaboration and influencing. So it's a tool, a guideline that any civil society organization can pick up, and they can do it themselves, even without anyone from Oxfam coming in to facilitate the exercise. They can do it themselves. What it allows you to do is it allows you to have the conversation in a safe space where you in your organization can unpack it. So our partners that we worked with that helped us develop it, it can be customized for your context. It allows, like I said, organizations to create a safe space for them to realize, okay, this is where we're weak, but actually we're quite strong in this. And it helps them to come up with some documents, some graphs that can show. They can then go to donors if they need donor support to improve their systems, and they can say, we've done our own analysis. We know that this is where we are. We know how sick we are, and we know how much medicine we need. And this is the medicine we realize. After all this, after analyzing, this is what we need. Yeah. So I guess that's the Oca guide allows that. And just adding on to that, it also has we've drawn from Western concepts, like the spider graph. That's something that a lot of practitioners use it. So we've drawn from Western concepts and also Pacific. So for the way forward, we use a Pacific analogy. So yes. I can't recommend it enough to CSOs. It's a tool that you can use without anyone from outside having to come in and help you complete it. Mm-hmm.
All the topics are the key areas, which was governance, and the other one was on organizational structure and finance. These are really key core areas that are all important, and I find interest in all these areas. And I think they're very important that we are able to address and look at the setbacks, the challenges that are being faced by our volunteers that are really doing the work here. They are the ones who are hands-on with work, and bringing that on board, that is really awesome.
I find very interesting the financial bit of the whole organization structure. It has policies, it has to be put in place. It has the finance, which is to be added onto it, because that is something that most organizations lack on the finance. And I find that the financial bit about the organization is much more maybe difficult. It can be difficult. And sometimes we try our very best to understand with a simple cash flow, bookkeeping matters and whatnot. But that has contributed a lot, expanded the perimeters of our thinking when it comes to finance.
It's so interesting. I've been taking notes. There are so many things there because I listen to experiences from different provinces. Yasana, from the Kondrove, from Mba. There are so many positive changes that are happening. So with this, I'm all ears, and I believe that when we go back, we will. There are many things that I've been noting down that we will, and one of this is really the importance of of transparency, getting out, communicating with our women. The top level people, the executives need to communicate to our women what's happening, on top. Why the Song of Marama, it's okay as a body, as a whole body at the national level is wanting this or expecting us, and we need to also, what's the word? To buy in, establish that link and that relationship and revive this Song of Marama. We have a role to play in our nation. Yeah.
I will definitely need to go back to my target group, the grassroots level, and emphasize the importance of having to do good planning, to do good forecasting, and to have a structure and to have a strategy plan in place.
For me, it's firstly in my asana, okay? I'm trying to contribute in making our voices, women's voices, heard at the provincial meetings. This is where we're making a lot of, I believe that I want to make changes over there using my what shall I say, my traditional role in the community, and navigate around that and sort of strategize in trying to let our Turangani Avusa, Turangani Vanua hear our voices and what matters to us women. I think that is where I want to effect change, using that position to sort of see changes happening and making sure that it trickles down to the community, to the villages, the 91 villages that we look after in our provinces. Yes.
First of all, the most difficult part about it, because most of these papers are written in the English language. First of all, I will need to have it translated in the vernacular, because my target group is a grassroots level people, where we will have to converse freely and in understanding one another. Need to have that done. Need to translate all the books and the papers that we have collected from here, so translated into the It's Okay language, so people are going to be able to understand that, and it's going to be a useful tool for continuing the work where the Song of Marama is concerned.
In fact, it's not new to us because it's an ongoing thing. We are doing outreach program with the women, and we take this to them. So our plan this year was to do 5 districts. We've done 2 so far. Even though it's COVID-19, we've done 2. I think we're doing well. And that's what we do. We go out and reach the grassroots women with all this dissemination of information.